In our marriage, Shay and I have experienced everything financially from living on food stamps to paying off our mortgage. And when we think back to what helped set us up for success, we think back to two things that we've done that I think have been the most financially life-changing in allowing us to experience health in our finances at this stage of the game. We're going to unpack those for you in today's episode.
Welcome to the Family Goals Podcast. We are Shay and Graham Cochran, and we believe that your family can do things differently. The payoffs are worth it, and the little things can have a huge impact.
All right, welcome back to the show. Hope you are having an amazing week. If you're enjoying the show, please help us out. Like it and rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Or if you're a YouTuber, subscribe. Like the video, leave us a comment. It lets the algorithm know that you're engaging with the show. So today we're talking about money. And this is great if you're married, kids, no kids, doesn't matter. We all deal with money and it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. So before we get into it, we can't go back and change the past. There's a lot of things I would have done differently in the past as well. But what we can do is think about the future, and our actions we take now do have ripple effects into the future, which is really the theme of today's episode. So we're going to break down these two life-changing things. I'm going to get into them, but if there's anything you want to say to set us up.
Do it.
Okay, so
I wish we had money, like dollars to just throw while we were
we need
talking.
a third person shooting a money gun. Yeah, just like walking behind us. Or I should have just worn my biggest, goldest chain.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say I should have worn my money tie. But I was like, I don't think you have a money tie.
I don't have a gold chain with diamonds.
Next episode.
All right, so this is really simple. Only two things, but I want to set the stage for both and sort of give you some context. So Shay and I were married in 2005, so we've been married
as
a
young
while.
children.
We were little babies. We were married right out of college. And so set the stage, we both just graduated from college. We both went into the workforce for the first time, and we both got decent jobs. Not great, not awful, but we had college degrees. So we were making $30,000 each a year. So we had a combined income of $60,000 a year, which is great. And I understand that's even great by today's standards. Not amazing, but doable. But back then it was really good. Mm-hmm. And we had no kids yet. We're going to get into like our expenses at the time in a minute. So it was very low expenses, which helped. But when we got married and we started to make money, we knew there was a lot of things we wanted down the road. We wanted to be able to one day own a home. We wanted to be able to replace vehicles because Shay had a really old car. I had a car that it was my grandfather's car that he let my brother have, and my brother let me have it when he was in college and couldn't use it. So like we're
the old hand-me-down cars.
We're just driving what we got, and so we knew we needed to replace cars. And so we think down the road, we're like, we gotta be intentional because there are going to be some major expenses down the road. And that's just if we want to have a normal American life. But if we ever wanted to build wealth, I mean, I don't know how that's going to happen.
I don't even think we thought about building wealth much at that point.
Yeah, too far down the road. But we did look at our situation, and the first principle, the first life-changing thing we did financially, and we can unpack how this worked and what it looked like, is that we made the audacious decision, which was countercultural to even our friend group at the time, which was to live off of one income. Now, we had two incomes, and I understand that not everybody does. And there was a season where we then dropped down to one when we started to have kids. Shay stopped working, and she was taking care of Chloe. She eventually started working on the side with her business, but there was a season where we only had one income. But back then, we had two. And we were like, do we need both incomes? We certainly could have.
Oh, yeah. We could have spent it.
And so like we'll tee it up, but like I'm thinking of like our friends that lived in a nicer apartment complex than we did. That
they had
like
an awesome townhouse.
Oh yeah, like there was nicer places to live in the town we were living in. We were on the not so nice part of town. They were in newer places. We were in a very old apartment of an old woman's house. So it's
like an upstairs apartment,
secondary residence, but you're on her property. Yeah. You have no yard. It was on a U.S. highway. So, like, it wasn't the best place that we wanted to be. So, like, we made some choices, but we thought, you know what? I think we could live off of 30 and not the 60.
Yeah.
What if we started saving the other 30?
Yeah.
And I want you to take it from there, but that's like the stage we're in. Like, that one decision alone is what set us up to be able to do the things we're doing now.
Yeah. And I think the point there is that it's so hard. You know, we all get used to our standard of living that we're at now, and we think there's no way I could possibly live off of less. I think it worked in our benefit that we made that decision pretty early on. And we said, we're going to take this. Thanks to Dave Ramsey. I think that was around the time that you were reading. You had read Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. And it had just kind of planted some ideas in us that we have two incomes now. That's a decent amount of financial leverage when you don't have kids and when your expenses are relatively kept pretty low. We could really do something with this that could really have a snowball effect in the future. So we could have spent more. We could have had nicer cars. We could have stayed in a nicer place. There were a lot of things that we said no to, but setting aside one income meant that over the years, we had a decent chunk of money that when the day came that we wanted to buy our first home and we were moving to Florida to purchase that first home, we actually had a large amount of money in savings at that point in time for a down payment in a house that we would not have had if we had not decided to just, we're going to live really lean right now. I love Dave Ramsey's phrase, like live like nobody else now so that you can live like no one else later. We really did adopt that. Yep. So living off of one income allowed us to save up a large portion, large by normal standards.
20%. We put 20% down on a house.
To put down on a house. Now, fast forward to the season of that house purchase, we were relocating states away from our family. We had a baby on the way. We had now a new mortgage because we were able to buy a house with a down payment that kept the monthly payment really low. And this was 2009, where you saw the first recession hit. And so all of a sudden, the economic situation really changed. Our personal economic situation really changed. Graham lost the job that he had come down there for. The company had to close down. We now have new baby, new mortgage, no family around.
And no income.
I think you were making $500 a month.
The church gave me a stipend. I was like the volunteer worship leader.
Because we had moved to help plant a church and he was a worship leader at the time. So the fact that we had lived off of one income and set aside all that money to save up for the down payment of the house, and then the fact that we had actually put all of that money into the down payment of the house meant that our mortgage was actually really low. And so when we went through one of the toughest financial seasons of our lives, we were okay. I mean, we had to go on food stamps. I mean, it was a rough situation. Yeah. I remember we had moved to Florida and we could not even afford to buy sunblock to put on our bodies in the Sunshine State. And we had help from family. We had help from younger siblings that were sending us money to help us pay the bills. It was a very financially dark period of time, but because we had lived off of one income and in doing that, still saved up an emergency fund and put a large amount down on the house, it gave us an enormous amount of financial, it eased a lot of the financial burden when all of a sudden there was not money to speak of.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we didn't lose the house, right? So like so many people in 2008, 2009 were losing their homes because their mortgage was only affordable if they had their full income. And so what was amazing is that we were able to keep paying our mortgage even though we lost our income because we could scrape by and try to create a few extra $100 a month here or there. And it's just so low of a payment because we had saved up so much to put down. So what that did, I mean, you start to take the ripple effects of not losing that house, being able to stay in the house. The house had lost value of 20% since we bought it. So the market was still collapsing. We bought in 2009. It dropped another 20%. So imagine we put 20% down on a house and then it's worth 20% less a year later when we're in this situation. So our down payment disappeared. We didn't have to sell and get out of the house. We would have lost that down payment. My neighbor across the street got really nervous and he sold his house and got out. And I was like, oh, don't sell. It's probably the bottom. We were able to keep that house. And then two things happened. One, when our income came back and then I started a business and God blessed it and it started to grow, then we were like, we could afford a nicer house and we don't even need to sell this house to get down payment money. So what we can do is actually buy another house, keep this house. And because the mortgage is so low, we can rent it out and the rent could cover it so that we could then not have to pay the mortgage on it. And that allowed us to hold on to that house for another 10 years before we ultimately sold it. And it doubled in value. So not only did we not lose the house or lose our down payment, the house doubled in value. And so that means we almost 5x'd our money over that period of time, our down payment money. And all of that because you go back in time to saving, one of our incomes or half of our income total.
Well, and we're still going to see the benefit of that because now we're looking at trying to help my parents retire. And so some of this, when we did finally go to sell that house, because we had put so much into it, there was so much equity, we got to keep a lot of what was made. And so we have a little bit of a sort of a nest egg set aside to now help them retire. So we're talking just ripple after ripple after ripple, all from that one decision to live off of just one income, really just to live below our means. But we decided to live like substantially below our means. And we still, with every house we buy, we still enjoy the benefit of that because it was like that we put so much down, that we got so much out of it, that we could put into the next one. It just continues.
It set us up well. So if you're like, well, that's great for you.
I love that for you.
Love that for you. That wouldn't work for me, or we can't live off of one of our incomes or whatever it is. The principle here is living below your means, but the principle is short-term sacrifice.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you should always live off of one income. There are schools of thought that are like, always save 50% of your income. If you can do that, I mean, that's amazing. But I would say, what could you do for 1 year? Like, could you do something radical for a year?
Yeah.
1 to 2 years. It's interesting when you look at people that get really serious about a financial goal, like paying off debt or saving up for a house, like the people that are like, I'm tired of waiting, or I'm tired of being in this situation, I'm going to do something. You see a lot of stories of people who are willing to do almost anything for up to 24 months. Yeah. Some people can go longer, but you see that 24-month period, you can almost, all right, we can sell our house, we can downsize, we can live with family, we're not going to eat out. The stuff that nobody wants to do, if it's for a short, defined period of time. And more importantly, the reason why is so clear. Like, if we do this for a year, we can own our own home, or we can move to the state we want to live in, or so the principle for you might be, what is a financial goal that you have that you could sacrifice for a dramatic sacrifice for a short period of time that not only would give you that goal, but then that goal would create ripple effects financially for the rest of your family tree and beyond, because that's like what we're seeing is we had short-term sacrifice. I don't know if it was that hard because, we didn't have kids yet, and we weren't living in a big city where there's even more like to go, oh my gosh,
we didn't know what we didn't have.
We didn't know, but we knew what our it's the same. We saw our friends living a better life than we did, and we chose to, okay, we're going to live in this old 1950s apartment above this old lady's house on this busy highway. But the reason is we want something more, and gosh, we're benefiting from it still to this day.
Yeah. Love that.
Okay. So
love that for you.
Yeah, so apply it to your life, and you can always make a decision today to do something different for a short period of time. Like short-term sacrifice. I hate long-term sacrifice because you just lose hope, and no one wants to sacrifice. But anyone can rally around a cause if it's for a short period of time, and it's a cause that's worth rallying around.
Number 2 is one that you're going to like even less than that one.
Popular episode alert.
That is the B word, budgeting. So we were introduced to budgeting again, thanks to Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover, the first year of marriage for us. I think you've shared that story on another episode, so we won't really go into that much here. But we learned how to live under a budget. And that budget at the time was incredibly small.
Yeah.
Mind-blowingly small. We actually have it here. This is the very first budget. I don't know, you guys, whether you can see this or not. This is the actual budget because we would print it out and put it on the fridge. This is
November 2005.
We got married in October of 2005. So this is literally
our first full month of marriage.
Month 1, first full month of marriage. The total was $2,175 was what we were bringing in at the time. And we had every single category. So it was a, what do you call it? A zero-sum budget. I mean, It was like every single dollar was
spent on paper first.
Spent on paper. And then we would print this out and we would tape it up like in the office in our spare bedroom. And as you spent, you can't see this because it's too far away from you, but as we spent, there was pencil marks and we would say, okay, now we went from 60 to having 20 and then to 5. We went from 45 to 20 to 0. We literally would mark out. This an Excel spreadsheet probably would have been a smarter way of doing this.
This is a spreadsheet, but we
wanted to be able to see it physically, and we wanted to be able to actually like write it in and work through it. So let me just tell you what some of these categories. Well, anything else you want to say overall about budgeting?
Well, yeah. So I hate budgeting as much as the next person. because budgeting feels restrictive, but Dave kind of like made an unlock for me years ago, which was, no, budgeting is telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it went. So it's really like, okay, I'm in charge here. Like I'm the captain now, like that movie, like I am the captain. And it's like, okay, we make a certain amount. Like this is a factual situation. There's not endless money. So let's start with what we know we make. And if you're a salesperson or commission person like me, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know how much I'm going to make each month. It varies. You base it off of your lowest month, right? Never your highest month. Rarely your average, unless you've got a pretty good, clear data on the average. You base it off your lowest month or a low average. Okay, this is what we have to work with. Based off of this, how much then can we afford to spend on rent, groceries, things like that? And the beauty of it, that's the disappointing part, is that you already feel the limitation, but it's just reality. Otherwise, you're in denial, and that's where people get into trouble.
Yeah, the reality is actually the same, whether you accept it or not. It's just, do you want to be in control within the reality and making choices within the reality, or do you want to ignore the reality and then it's going to control you and you're going to feel like, there's never enough?
Yeah, and I think it was Dave Ramsey even talks about this in his book. He calls it, like, a section called You Incorporated. He said, if you were managing the money for your family, but it was for a business, if your family were a business, like, and you manage it the way you're managing it right now, like, would you be in business or would you be out of business? Yeah. And the question is, like, most of us would be out of business, because if we just spend without thinking about how much comes in, businesses go out of business when they spend more than they make, unless they continue to get investors and like money coming in. And then it becomes just like the money comes in, it goes out faster, and eventually it catches up with them. So for me, it was like, okay, it's hard to face the music because we didn't make much. I mean, $2,000 a month is not much. And again, we were making more, but we were choosing to save a little bit of that. But this was before Shay actually had a job. So this is really when we just only had one income that first month.
Because I was still in college.
Cool.
Because we got married over fall break, my senior year.
I married a child.
I was 2 weeks legal when we got married.
Legal for drinking age. She was...
For drinking.
Yeah, she was 21.
For drinking.
She was 21, guys. Come on.
Hey, I hope that you're loving this episode. But listen, what we really want to do is save you from one more boring night of tech gather time spent scrolling your phone side by side. We have a better idea, okay? We've created 5 absolutely foolproof conversation prompts to help you connect with your spouse today.
Yeah, these are like literally fill in the blank easy. Simple questions, nothing heavy, nothing too serious. These are light and fun to do exactly what they say, to help you connect. So to get these free conversation prompts, just go to familygoalspodcast.com/connect. They're free, they're fun, use them today. Now, back to the episode.
But so this is my income. I was making $21.75 a month. Wow, that's $25K a year.
It's crazy. So this, when we say to our first point that we were living off of one income.
That's how we started.
This was the income that we were living off of. It wasn't like we were living off of a $75,000 a year income. This was what we were living off of. Yeah. And then I had my little small income.
Yeah.
Similar
so that was my
to this.
net pay, $21.75. Oh, punishing. But so the beautiful thing is you just start to like, okay, if this is what we have to work with, great. Let's start to put some things on paper, because then it tells you how much can I spend at restaurants. Mm-hmm. If you don't have anything else, like you could spend unlimited, I could spend unlimited money at a restaurant because that's one of my favorite things to do. But if I know this is how much my rent is, and this is how much my insurance is, and how much, like, if I have a car payment, whatever the fixed things are that aren't negotiable, that's what helps you determine, okay, all we have left to spend on groceries or restaurants or gas or the things that you have some control over. That's helpful. And so the principle here is make a plan for your money. I don't care how you budget. I don't care if you like budgeting. I don't care if it's a spreadsheet with a lot of cool colors or if it's an app. There's a ton of tools now that didn't exist back then.
Or even what you value. Like, everyone's going to value different things. And that's what's beautiful is your budget doesn't have to reflect our values. Your budget can reflect your values. You can value sneakers. You can value going to sports games. You can value driving nice cars. You can value whatever you want to value. It's just, am I living aligned with the reality of how much money I have and what I value? And then the things that are going to come up in life that we like to pretend are not going to come up in life, like medical bills, car fixes.
Clothes wearing out.
Or your
kids growing faster than the
A
clothes.
bill at the school or something, a class field trip. Like there are just things that are going to happen no matter what. They're going to happen and you don't have any control over it. But if you know that they're going to happen at some point in the year, you can budget around them. So then you really have a real sense of what's left to spend on the negotiables.
Yep.
Like how much do we spend at the grocery store or going out to eat or on vacation or that kind of thing, because you've really incorporated everything. And then I think we talked about this in an earlier episode also, but then there's no devastating surprises for the most part, because you've at least been able to save a bit ahead of time to mitigate those things. Your car is going to need to be repaired at some point.
Christmas is coming December 25th every year.
Your
Surprise.
kids' birthdays are coming every year. So if you can go ahead and set aside money for those things, then when those things that are either known or unknown happen, you're just in less of a financially stressful situation.
So the other part of budgeting, the fun part then, is also you're saving. Like you should be saving money for the things that you value or that are coming up. And so that you aren't hoping your way to, I hope I could pay for that dream vacation. I hope I could have a down payment for a house. It's never going to happen. It's the people that say, like, if you look at our budget house fund to save up for a down payment of a house,
my gosh, this is so laughable.
$35.
$35 a month.
That's all we could afford.
To save up for our new house, for a future someday new house. But it was something. There's more categories like that. It's so funny. Netflix, y'all remember Netflix? When we paid, there's still Netflix. Never mind. I was thinking of the movie.
These were DVDs,
was the
y'all.
DVD exchange.
That's how old we are. When Netflix just had come out, we got DVDs mailed to us.
Yeah, the mailed DVDs. That's what that was.
Era.
That was our entertainment.
That's when we would watch.
Budget.
We binge watch Lost on DVDs.
Yep.
Like catch
we
up
had
on seasons of Lost.
$50 a month car fund. So
to
that
save
was
up for a new car.
To save up for a new car or for car repairs, because I don't think we had a separate car repair fund. So that would have been. I don't think a new car even was on our radar. But we would set aside $50 a month for any kind of car repair that we needed. And
y'all, just if you're a person of faith, if you're a Christian, just here we also have our tithe. So $220, 10% of the $2,200 a month I was making net. So from day one, we were like, we're going to commit to tithing to our church. And this is another reason why I think God, like our finances have been blessed, is because there's promises on the tithe being blessed. And so it's interesting to see how I look at that, I'm like, dude, I could move that 220 to so many other things. When you're only making $2,000 a month, 220 is like, it's amazing that we were like, well, we're going to just commit to that.
Yeah.
Just as much as we got to commit to rent. We're going to commit to that and just trust God for the rest. And man, He has blessed us through and through.
And you can see what we valued here, because we would allocate only $50 a month for eating out, but we would allocate $100 a month for a travel fund, because we were willing to say no to eating out so that we could say yes to getting to take a trip. So over the course of a year, you'd have $1,200 saved up. That was a really decent trip back then.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think the encouraging thing that I would love for you to take away from this is that every little bit matters. Your reality is the same, whether you acknowledge it or not. The reality of how much you make and the reality of the expenses of life are the same, whether you acknowledge it or not. So why not acknowledge it? Why not make some decisions, take some ownership, allocate even small amounts of money towards the things that you know are going to happen, like Christmas, or the things that you want to happen, like family vacation. And it was really in doing that. And the reason why we bring up budgeting as it relates to like the two most life-changing things we ever did is that learning how to responsibly manage $2,000 a month meant that when we made $2,500, we knew how to manage it. When we made $3,000 a month, we knew how to manage it. When we made $3,500, we knew how to manage it, because we had learned how to manage every single dollar, which taught us the value of every dollar. So if you got $25 extra, we could go to the Mexican restaurant, split it another entree. That's a whole another date night. Or maybe we could each order our own entree at dinner. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
We knew the value of a dollar, and we knew how to put that money to use. So anytime we got a little bit more money, it wasn't like, oh, where should we go blow this? It was like, oh man, this could get us a lot farther down the road with this specific goal or this specific dream or desire. So we knew the value, we knew where we wanted to put it before it would just, put itself somewhere.
Well,
we knew where to put it.
To that point, like this was pre us moving to Florida and losing everything and then going broke and being on food stamps. And so having the the habit and learning the skill of budgeting on a middle class income helped us when we had only $500 a month.
Total.
I don't even know how that worked. That's just God's grace. But we were like, okay, the categories don't disappear. You still need to live,
They
but
just get
the numbers
smaller.
just get incredibly small.
I mean, some categories might have to disappear, but for the most
we
part,
stopped saving when there was no money to save.
Yeah.
But we still tithed, and we still had to pay our mortgage, and we still had to.
we still gave each other fun money,
food,
so you don't lose your
I don't
mind.
even know how that one worked because it was so low. People
was
were
God
helping
math.
us out.
It
Yeah, it
was
was God
literally
math. Yeah,
God
it doesn't
math.
make sense.
Because
But
we didn't have to go into debt. We had an emergency fund.
And
We had
that-
saved
and
up some money
that
for
worked
emergency
for a
fund. We
few
could live
months,
off
and
of
then it
that
was
for a
gone,
few
yeah.
months. Yeah.
And so here's the beauty of it, right? Is it is a principle of being faithful with a little, you'll be found faithful with much. And so in the scriptures, you see this, there's all these parables that Jesus teaches of a landowner or a farmer or a master who owns the land. And then he has workers that he entrusts, hey, you take care of some of this land, you take care of this vineyard that I just planted, and I'll come back and see what you did with it. And the ones that took what he had, little, big, small, whatever the amount was, and multiplied it or managed it well, he's like, okay, great. I see I can trust you with the 5 talents or the 2 minas or whatever I gave you. I'm going to give you a responsibility over 2 cities or 5 cities, or I'm going to multiply your amount of money. And so as a person of faith, we see that as a principle. God's always testing us. But it's also just true in the world of the skills that you acquire in just, okay, how can I, I coach business owners and they want more income in their business, obviously. But when we get into the way they manage their time and their resources in their business, I'm like, look, even if you started to add an extra $50,000 a month to this thing, it would disappear because you're not managing it well and you're not managing your time well. So even if they're not a person of faith, I can point out you don't have the skill yet of faithfully managing what you do have so that when your business does take off, you have a system and an infrastructure in place where you know what to do with that increase.
Yeah.
Of all right, great. Now I can hire this person. I can put more towards these
I know
resources.
exactly where that money's going to
Exactly.
go.
So it's just a skill that's so valuable no matter how much or how little you make. And so we've had this skill set of we learned it on middle class income. It was useful when we were very, very broke.
What's lower than middle class income? Because for sure we had to apply that.
Yeah, we were technically under the poverty line because we
For sure we were.
We were approved for food stamps at least for 18 months, and then coming out of that, and then coming into tremendous wealth. I'm so grateful that we know these principles now because people who have a lot of money don't have their money problems solved. Right? It's the numbers are just always staggering to me of how do these NFL players go bankrupt after 5 years being out of the NFL, or people who win the lottery. It's the amount of money never solves the problem. It could solve the problem if the person
Solves
has
other problems.
Well, it depends on the person that's given the money. If that person has the skills and the habits and the systems in place to handle it and the character in place to handle it, then yeah, the money could solve a ton of problems. But I'm grateful that we have this in place. So for us and for you, I think the principle is, look, learn the basic skill or relearn or find a better way that works for you to budget, AKA have a spending plan, a plan for how you're going to spend and save your money based around, to Shay's point, what you value as a family. And that's going to look different than us. And you have that freedom. That's the beauty of it. No one's going to come check your budget. That's up to you. It's a tool for you. But figure it out now or get better at it now so that when you come into more wealth and more income and more opportunities, or you get a bonus or the IRS sends you an extra $5,000, you already know how to pre-spend that money. Okay, cool. We're going to put $1,000 towards a fun trip. We're going to tithe a little bit. We're going to pay off some of that debt. It's the Ramit Sethi calls it the next $100 principle. If I gave you another $100, do you know what you're going to do with it? And you should have mentally a plan for, I know what I would do with the next $100. Most people don't know what they're going to do with the next $100. It's the same principle. It's just planning ahead of time so that when or if, but hopefully when more comes in, you're not like, oh, great, now what do we do? You have a plan, and it's just more zeros at the end of it.
Yeah. A few just tactical things I want to tack on to that before we wrap up is what this looked like functionally is that once a month we would have a budget review meeting and a budget planning meeting. So we'd look back at the month. How did it go? Where were we under? You could see the negatives. These highlighted areas are where we overspent. And that overspending meant We also didn't use credit cards at the time, so we would not go into debt. So overspending in one category meant that we had to subtract it from another category. So we have those things highlighted in yellow. Those are areas where like, okay, we need to keep an eye on this because we might have to adjust our budget. We were a little bit off here. But this meant a once a month intense money meeting compared to an all the time money bickering.
Yeah.
And yes, those first conversations, if you're like, oh, I'm motivated by this, Shay and Graham, I'm going to do this. I want to change my family's financial future. We're going to take on budgeting. We've tried in the past and it's failed, but we're going to do it again. We're committed. We're going to get Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. We're going to do the thing. And you sit down and you have that first meeting. And I'm just going to warn you, it's going to totally suck.
Yeah, it probably won't go well.
It's probably not going to go well. There might be tears. It will be more depressing, maybe more depressing than you think it's going to be. There will be difficult conversations that have to be had. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some tension because one of you might be a saver. One of you might be a spender. You're going to have different value systems. That doesn't mean that it's not working. Yeah. Okay. Just know that that's what it's going to feel like at first. So you're going to need to come with all your finances. You're going to need to come together with an understanding of what you're spending. You're going to need to be realistic and reasonable about where money needs to be allocated. You're going to need to set aside a few hours for this without children and maybe with wine, or maybe not with wine. Maybe wine will make it worse. But it's going to be hard at first. And then the next month, it's going to be hard. And then the next month, it's going to be hard. And then the next month, it's going to get a little bit easier. And then the month after that, it's going to get a little bit easier. And so on and so forth. And if nothing else, it reduces your money arguments down to one time a month. Yeah. And there were plenty of tears when we would have these meetings. But that is certainly better than constant bitterness or tension or resentment over what you're spending. And the other thing I'll add is that both of you need to be on the same page about this. If you're listening to this and you're married, you do need to be on the same page about this. This is not going to work the way it does in many houses where one person makes the budget, cares about budgeting, and then just tries to enforce it with the other person. That's going to build a lot of resentment and a lot of arguments, and you're not both bought in. It's going to be exhausting for the person who's actually trying to keep the family on budget. You both have to be committed to sit down and do this together, to agree on the categories together, to commit together to upholding this, come what may. So do it together. It's not enough for one person. There's one financially responsible person and one person who doesn't have to be. That's not how it works.
There's no free pass.
You have to come together. So once a month finance meeting, agree on these things together. Yeah. Accountability. There's plenty of apps that you can use and things like that can help you track your spending. You're going to have to track spending. But if there was one thing that we could trace back to as having the biggest financial impact on our current state and our financial legacy in the future, it would be budgeting, even over the living off of one income. That had some like just tangible snowball effects. But the fact that we learned to budget and learned how to budget off of so little, 18 years ago, was really what has set us up for where we are now. 100%. I am so grateful that we were willing to do the hard thing then. It would have been harder to do it now. Like, I'm glad we were able to do the hard thing then and learn so much and set so many just a great foundation in place that we still reap the benefits of.
That's so good. Yeah, and just maybe like a place to land here is for both of these things, and really anytime you're talking about money, especially when there's a marriage involved and there's two people with money, is remember what the point is. Like, get back to dreaming together. Like, what do you want in life? What dreams do you have? Dreams to be able to have time for your grandkids, to own a home, to travel, to open up your first restaurant, to like
send your kids to college because you didn't get to go to college, whatever it might be.
Whatever your dreams are, like start there and get alignment there. And you might have some different dreams and then they become your collective dreams. Like Shay might have a dream of having like a garden, having, I don't know, like chickens or like some land,
a garden.
I want to live in a penthouse in the middle of a city. Like I don't, different. So, but her dream becomes our dream, you know, and we like, she's at least have to figure out what that could look like. But start with the dreams.
A penthouse on 2 acres.
Yeah. I'll build a skyscraper. I'll build a condo.
In the city with 2 acres with chickens.
And I want all the land around it. But you start with the dreams because that's what gets us fired up. Like that's what gets us out of bed every day is because like, why would we go to work every day is for something bigger, something that we truly desire. Start with the dreams because you can at least align on that and get excited about that. And then look at a budget or living off of an income or sacrifice or whatever we're talking about as a tool to get to that dream.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur, you understand this. We want the reward. What are we willing to do to get it? It's the same in your finances. Dreams cost money. You can have just about anything you want in life if you could just pay for it. And you don't have to have the biggest income to pay for it, but you do have to have the best management of the money you do have to be able to afford it. And so I say, don't try to win at budgeting, just win at dreaming together. And then the budget becomes a tool to help you get your dreams.
Yeah, love it.
All right. We end these episodes with gratitude. So what is something you are grateful for today?
I'm grateful that it's one more week before the kids are out of school and then it's summertime. The kids are done. I'm done. Like, we're just all done with school and with like the pace of life during the school year.
Yeah,
being up at 5 a.m. I'm done with that. I'm ready to be done. So I'm glad that there's only 1 week of school left and then summertime begins.
I love that. I'm grateful this week I got to connect with some really cool people. I'm grateful for all the incredible people God's bringing into my life. Just new friendships, new relationships, new people that I'm learning from that I'm like, oh, I'm glad to know you and glad I'm in your corner and you're in my corner. The work I do is very lonely. If you're a content creator, you kind of know, like, you're sitting alone in a room by yourself, just talking to a camera, making stuff.
Looking at yourself on camera usually.
Oh yeah, I don't even look at myself. I just look at the black dot, but it's lonely. And so it's cool in the last couple of years, and especially in the last 2 weeks, I've been able to connect with so many people out of the blue. So I'm just grateful for that this week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Hopefully this episode has been helpful for you. Hopefully there's at least one thing that you can take away. Hopefully you feel encouraged and empowered with your finances. We'll have many more conversations about this. This is something that matters to us and can really change the course of your family and your family's legacy and your marriage. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, share it, comment, let us know, subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube. Your support means the world to us. It means we can keep making these episodes for you.
See you next time.